Picture a city of 4 million people, a city so large it swallows villages whole, so wealthy it owns a quarter of the globe, so certain of its own righteousness it has erected laws against what two consenting adults do in private. Now fill that city with fear. Not the fear of cholera, not the fear of bankruptcy, not the fear of the workhouse, though those fears are real and constant and everywhere. A different kind of fear, older, more intimate. The kind of fear that lives in your chest like a second heartbeat. The kind that makes you examine every word before you say it, every glance before you offer it, every smile before you let it reach your eyes. Add the smell of fog and coal and horse dung. Add gaslight that turns the streets amber at night and makes shadows out of doorways. Add the knowledge that what you are, not what you've done, not what you've said, not what you've chosen, but what you simply are, can send you to prison for 2 years of hard labour, that you can be broken on a treadmill in Pentonville for the crime of existing in the wrong body with the wrong feelings, that the newspapers will print your name, that your employer will dismiss you, that your family will close the door. That's Victorian London. That's 1894. A place where gentlemen discuss liberty over port while the law reaches into the most private corners of private lives. A place where a man can own 1,000 shares in a railway company that employs children in dangerous conditions and be considered a pillar of society, but be caught touching another man's hand in the wrong way and be ruined before the week is out. A place of extraordinary contradiction. A place where the surface is as polished as a gentleman's shoe, and underneath there is a whole world they pretend does not exist. We're going there tonight, not as historians looking at court records, not as academics reading parliamentary transcripts. We're living it. 1 year, 1 city, 1 life. Everything you would have seen, everything you would have felt, everything you would have learned to hide, and everything you would have found. So, I make these history episodes, and honestly, part of me wonders who the audience actually is for one about secret codes in Victorian homosexual culture. You're either the most academically curious people on the planet, or you've had a genuinely interesting week, or you're historians who've already read everything and just want someone to make it feel real. Either way, subscribe if you want, get comfortable, turn the lights down. Here we go. Your name is James Whitmore. You're 22 years old. You arrived in London 14 months ago from Manchester with a letter of reference from your former employer, a law firm where you spent 3 years copying documents in a cold office above a hardware shop, and exactly 1 small trunk of clothes, and a feeling you have been carrying so long it no longer feels like a feeling at all. It feels like weather, like the particular grey of a winter sky that never quite decides whether it's going to rain. You have a room in Clerkenwell, 3rd floor, front, above a bootmaker's. The smell of leather and glue comes up through the floorboards on warm days and something else on cold days. Something damp and organic that you have decided not to investigate too closely. Your eyes open. Grey light. The particular grey that means it is before 6 in the morning, before the gas lamps on the street outside have been turned off but after the night has lost its real darkness. You are on your back. The ceiling has a crack in it that you have memorised over 14 months. It runs from the corner above the door to a point slightly left of centre, where it branches into 2 smaller cracks that look, if you stare long enough, like the letter Y. You have stared at it long enough. You have stared at it on mornings when you could not sleep, which is more mornings than you would like to count, when the thought that lives in your chest like a second heartbeat wakes up louder than your rational mind and starts asking questions you cannot answer. The boarding house is stirring. You can hear Mrs. Partridge on the floor below, her footsteps deliberate and flat-heeled, moving from her bedroom to the kitchen. The sound of a grate being opened. The soft crash of coal going in. Your fellow lodger, a Mr. Everton who sells patent medicine and smells powerfully of his own products, is still asleep on the other side of the thin wall. You can hear his breathing. Slow and entirely unconcerned. The breathing of a man who has never once in his life woken at 5 a.m. to lie staring at a ceiling crack, wondering what he is. You know what you are. You've known since you were 16, standing in a schoolyard in Manchester watching a friend of yours run. The particular movement of his shoulders as he ran, and feeling something so sudden and so specific that it was almost like a physical blow. Not desire exactly, not yet. Something before desire, recognition. The way you might feel recognizing a word in a foreign language you did not know you had learned. You have known for 6 years, and in 6 years you have told no one. You get up, the floor is cold, the boards have a slight give to them near the window, and you avoid that spot by habit, the same way you avoid certain thoughts by habit, by routing yourself around them before you're close enough to fall. The washing basin is on the dresser. The water is cold. You poured it last night before bed, optimistic about your morning motivation, and now it sits there looking grey and Novemberish, and you splash it on your face anyway, because the shock of cold water is something, a small, manageable unpleasantness, the kind you can control. You dress quickly, black trousers, slightly shiny at the knee, a white shirt with a collar that took half an hour to get right last Sunday when you washed and starched it, a dark grey waistcoat, a jacket that is presentable but not impressive, the clothes of a copying clerk, the clothes of a man who occupies the narrow band between respectable and invisible, which is exactly where you have positioned yourself with great deliberateness. Invisible is safe. Invisible is strategy. Downstairs, Mrs. Partridge has left bread and a pot of tea on the kitchen table as part of the arrangement. 10p a week extra for the bread and tea. You eat standing, which is not required of you, but which feels more honest somehow with the day. Less comfortable. You eat a slice of bread that is yesterday's loaf, slightly stiff on the outside, still soft enough in the middle. You drink tea that is stronger than you would make it yourself, with a colour like old varnish. Through the kitchen window you can see the street. It is already moving. This is London. The street begins moving before the city is fully awake, the way a large body of water begins showing the effects of a storm before the storm arrives. Carts, horses, a woman with a basket, a man in a long coat who is walking very quickly with his head down, the particular posture of someone who has been somewhere they should not have been, and is returning from it before the day gets bright enough to notice. You think about that man sometimes. Noticed him first 3 weeks ago. He is out there 2 or 3 mornings a week, always the same time, always the same walk, the same coat, the same head-down direction of travel. You do not know where he has been. You do not let yourself speculate. But you notice him. The office is 20 minutes' walk. Your employer is a firm of solicitors near Gray's Inn. You copy documents, wills, lease agreements, correspondence, contracts, pages and pages of other people's lives written in your hand, your pen moving steadily across paper, while your mind does whatever it does when the body's occupied and the mind is left to wander. You walk. November in London, which means damp air that sits in your lungs like a wet cloth, and a particular quality of light that is less light than absence of complete darkness. The streets are complicated. A cart horse has stopped in the middle of Clerkenwell Road and is declining, with considerable dignity, to move. 3 men argue around it. A woman selling hot chestnuts from a brazier on the corner is doing brisk business from people who would otherwise have nowhere to put their hands. You buy a bag, a halfpenny. The chestnuts are hot enough to almost burn through the paper, and the smell of them, charred and sweet and starchy, rises up in the cold air, and you hold them between your palms and walk and feel, for a moment, entirely ordinary. Ordinary is something you work at. Here is the thing about being ordinary in 1894 London when you are what you are. Ordinary is not the absence of effort. Ordinary is constant, concentrated, invisible effort. It is the work of managing your face, your voice, the direction of your eyes, the length of your silences, the content of your contributions to conversations. When someone at the office mentions a pretty girl, you learn the exact calibration of a response that registers as appropriate but unremarkable. Not too enthusiastic, that reads as compensating. Not dismissive, that reads as peculiar. Something in the neutral middle. The face of a man who has noticed but is not particularly moved. Appropriate, unremarkable. You've had years of practice. The office is on the 2nd floor of a building that smells permanently of paper, and the particular dusty dryness of rooms that have been inhabited by the same people for decades. Your desk is near the window. This is luck, or the legacy of a previous clerk who left for reasons you were not told, and you have spent 14 months being quietly grateful for the grey daylight. That means you do not have to work entirely by gaslight until December. In December you will work by gaslight entirely, and your eyes will hurt and you will not complain. Because complaining about gaslight is not something you do. You sit. You hang your coat on the hook behind your chair. You open the current pile of documents. Today it is a land purchase agreement. 47 pages. Your pen is already inked. You begin. The office has 4 other clerks. Benson, who is 43 and has been here since before you were born, and has the quality of a piece of office furniture that has become indistinguishable from the building. Hatch, who is 28, and was at school somewhere minor and is very aware of this. Fletcher, who is 20 and from Leeds, and eats his lunch with both elbows on the desk in a way that makes Hatch visibly uncomfortable. And Morrison. Morrison is 24. You do not think about Morrison. You think about the land purchase agreement. 47 pages. Party of the first part. You think about the land purchase agreement. Lunch is a cold mutton pie from the shop 2 doors down, and a place to eat it on the steps of a church nearby, where 3 other people are doing the same thing, none of them speaking to the others. This is the London way. You can sit within 3 feet of a person, on steps, in a park, on a bus, and exist in total social isolation from them. In Manchester this bothered you. In London you have come to understand it as a kind of gift. The gift of unremarkability, of being alone in public, which is entirely different from being alone in private. In public, alone means invisible. In private, alone means the ceiling crack and the second heartbeat. You eat the pie. It is filled with meat that has had a complicated relationship with the word mutton. You eat it anyway. You watch a pigeon examine a piece of bread with the intense focus of a man reviewing a legal document. You finish your lunch and walk back. In the afternoon you copy. The pen moves. The gaslight is not yet on. The grey November light is enough. Benson falls asleep briefly and wakes himself with a small snore and pretends he did not. Fletcher drinks something from a flask and offers it to no one, And Morrison says at approximately 3:30, "Whitmore, do you read?" You look up from the land purchase agreement. Morrison has a quality of stillness about him that you have noticed before and deliberately not noticed noticing. Dark hair that he keeps cut close. A way of holding his pen very lightly, almost no pressure, which is technically the correct way to hold a pen for extended copying work. You know this because the same law firm in Manchester where you learned your trade had a clerk who explained it. A very old man named Pickering who held his pen with such delicacy, it seemed like it might float away. You think about Pickering sometimes. Pickering is a safe person to think about. "I read," you say. "What sort of thing?" Hatch looks up briefly, looks down, not interested. "History," you say. "Natural philosophy sometimes. Poetry." Morrison nods as though you have said something confirming rather than something informative. He looks back at his document. Then, after a pause, "There is a reading society I go to, Thursday evenings, if you have an interest." You look at him for a moment. "What sort of reading?" "Essays mostly, poetry sometimes, discussion of same." "Who organises it?" "A man named Alderton. He has a flat in Bloomsbury." You consider this a reading society in Bloomsbury. This is the kind of thing that a respectable young bachelor clerk might attend. Nothing peculiar about it. Men of a literary inclination gathering to discuss essays. This is normal. This happens. "Perhaps," you say. Morrison looks back at his document. The conversation is apparently over. Benson snores again and again, recovers. Outside, the light is failing. The gaslighter is doing the street outside. 1 lamp, 2. The orange glow appearing in sequence down the road like a slow tide coming in. You copy. Party of the first part. Party of the second part. All the parties. But Thursday stays in your mind like a word in a foreign language you almost know. You've been in London for 14 months. You've been to 3 music halls and 2 lectures at the Working Men's Institute, and 1 exhibition at the South Kensington Museum and the same church twice. You have not made friends, specifically. You have made acquaintances, the kind that exist in the form of conversations that take place in specific locations and do not migrate into other parts of your life. The baker on Clerkenwell Road who asks about the weather. The newsagent who knows you take the morning paper, and sometimes a penny dreadful from the rack below the counter, though you always pretend you're buying it for someone else. You have the reading group invitation. You put it away in the same place you put everything you think about too much, which is the place in your mind that you have organised like a very tidy room with a locked door. Thursday comes. The flat is on the 3rd floor of a building near Russell Square. The door is open when you arrive. Slightly past 7 in the evening, you can hear voices inside. Low, conversational. The sound of several men talking at once without any of them raising their voices. The sound of educated informality, which is its own particular register. Not the working man's pub voice, not the schoolroom voice, but the voice of people who are comfortable and among people they have chosen to be among. You knock. A man of perhaps 35 answers, round face, slightly flushed, a smile that has decided to like you before you have said anything. He's wearing a dark green waistcoat. "Whitmore, I'm Alderton. Morrison mentioned you might come. Come in, come in." The room is not what you expected. You're not certain what you expected exactly. But the room. It has books on every wall, which is normal enough. A rug that is Turkish or imitating Turkish, dark reds and golds, worn soft in the centre. 3 oil lamps giving a warm light. And there are 8 men in it, sitting in chairs and on a long sofa and on the windowsill, and they are You're trying to find the word. Comfortable. They have the ease of people who've been comfortable together before. Morrison is there. He looks up and nods. You are introduced. Alderton. Vane, who is an illustrator for a magazine and has paint under his fingernails even now. Crawford, who teaches at a school and seems very young for a teacher. Pierce, who is an actor in the company at the Lyceum. Hartley, who you are not certain of and who is not certain of you. Bellamy, who is perhaps 40 and says very little, and has the watchful quality of a man who has learned to watch. And a young man called Tom, who appears to be living in the flat rather than visiting it, who brings tea in from the kitchen and sits on the rug near the fire with a book. They're drinking tea and discussing an essay by Walter Pater. You take a cup. You sit. You listen. The essay is about beauty, about the relationship between beauty and sensation, about the quality of attention we give to things that move us. Alderton makes a point about Pater's idea of burning with a hard gem-like flame. Crawford disagrees, gently, with great politeness. Vane draws something in a small notebook while he listens, which you find out later is a habit he is unable to stop. You say something, eventually. About a paragraph you read once in a natural philosophy text. Something about the way the mind registers colour versus the way it registers form. It is not especially brilliant, but they listen to it. Pierce says it connects to something Ruskin wrote. Alderton agrees. The conversation goes on. You drink your tea. You watch the room. You notice things. Pierce and Crawford sit closer to each other than acquaintance requires. When Crawford makes a point, Pierce's hand moves slightly, almost touches Crawford's knee, stops itself, rests on the sofa arm instead. You see this. You file it. Bellamy watches you watching and offers you the faintest tilt of the head. The kind of acknowledgement that means something without meaning anything that can be pointed at. Alderton has a painting above the fireplace. It is a classical subject. You're not sure of the myth. 2 male figures in a landscape, one standing, one seated, the standing figure extending his hand toward the seated one. The painting is painted with great care and specific affection. You look at it for a moment too long, and then look at your tea. The evening ends at 9:30. People leave by 1s and 2s. You put on your coat in the hallway and Morrison appears beside you. What did you make of it? Interesting, you say, and then, more honestly than you intended, I'll come back. Morrison smiles. It is the most expression you have seen from him in 14 months of sharing a room at 11 feet apart. You walk home through November streets, the gas lamps, the fog beginning to build at the intersections, a man walking a dog, the dog wearing a small coat, which you find unexpectedly moving. You lie in your bed and stare at the ceiling crack. You know what kind of room that was, or you think you do. You're not completely certain. The men talked about Pater. They discussed art. There was nothing you could point to, nothing that broke the law, nothing that could be described. But there was a quality of ease in that room, a specific ease, the ease of people who have, in some way, stopped performing for each other. You have never stopped performing. Try to remember what that might feel like. You go back the following Thursday, and the one after that. It takes 4 Thursday evenings before you begin to understand the other language, the one underneath the Pater and the Ruskin and the cups of tea, the one that operates entirely in the negative space of the conversation, in what is not said, and how it is not said, and who is allowed to sit where, and what a particular kind of smile at a particular kind of comment means. You are a copying clerk. You are paid to read carefully. You read carefully. Here is what you learn. Green. Green is the first thing, not any green, a particular green. The deep sage to bottle spectrum. Alderton's waistcoat. A pocket square on vein. A ribbon on a hat band that Crawford comes in wearing one evening. A green carnation in a buttonhole which you have seen once on the street, on a man outside the Lyceum Theatre, and which you noticed and then noted and then noticed yourself noting and filed away, and now you understand it. It starts with Oscar Wilde. Wilde wears a green carnation at the first night of a play, and his friends wear them, and his particular circle of admirers wear them, and within months the green carnation has become not a signal exactly, not a password, but a recognition, a way of being readable to the people who know how to read it, and entirely invisible to the people who do not. This is the first principle of the language, which you will later understand with great precision. It must be visible to the right eyes and invisible to the wrong ones. The difficulty is that there is no official code, no pamphlet, no instruction, no ceremony where someone hands you the rule book and says, "Here, this is how it works." The code grew the way things grow in secret, organically and inconsistently, and with tremendous variation by location and class and time. What works in Bloomsbury literary circles is not quite what works in the parks. What works in the parks is not quite what works in the public houses of Soho. What works in London in 1894 is not what worked in London in 1870, and everything works only until it stops working, until a word or a gesture gets known by the wrong people, until a policeman reports back to his superiors what he's observed, until a newspaper looking for a scandal to sell copies publishes a story that names the signals. Then the signals change. The whole system moves and reforms and reinvents itself, the way water finds a new path when you dam the old one. But you are beginning to understand the principles. The principles do not change. The principles are recognizability without confirmability. The signal must allow another man to recognize you, but it must not be confirmable in a court of law. It must always be possible to say, "I was simply wearing a green carnation. I like green carnations. There is no law against green carnations. Deniability. Everything must be deniable. Every word, every touch, every meeting. The code must always fit inside a larger, innocent-seeming reality. Men gathering to discuss literature is how men gather to discuss literature. It is also how they gather to be among their own kind. Both things are true. Neither one cancels the other. Layering. The code operates in layers. The outer layer is entirely visible and entirely normal. The layer beneath it is visible to initiated eyes only. There may be a layer beneath that, accessible only to those who have demonstrated sufficient trust. You do not show the inner layers until you are certain of the other person. And being certain takes time, and time is exactly what the law is designed to take from you. It is a profound system, not designed by any single person, not organized, not recorded anywhere, evolved over decades through the collective intelligence of people who had to be clever because the alternative was catastrophe. You find this beautiful in the way that you find complicated mechanisms beautiful, the precision of it, the elegance of the constraint, the way necessity produced this intricate, invisible architecture. Crawford explained some of it to you directly, one evening when the others have gone and you're helping carry cups to the kitchen. He does it obliquely, the way everything is done obliquely, in the form of describing something from a distance, as though you're both looking at the same interesting object that neither of you has quite touched. "There's a word," he says, filling the basin. Polari. You might hear it. If you hear it, you'll know what it means. What is it? A language, or the skeleton of one. From the theatre, from the fairground, from the Italian sailors in the ports. A cant, a way of talking that sounds like noise to people who haven't learned it. He says a few words. You repeat them back. He nods. You're quick, he says. That's useful. He doesn't elaborate on what it's useful for. He doesn't need to. You understand the grammar of this conversation. You say, thank you. You both go back to the sitting room where Alderton and Tom are discussing the relative merits of Tennyson. The language is, once you start hearing it, you find it everywhere you were not listening before. The Polari, the words, bona for good, naff for bad, though naff will travel much further through history than anyone here can imagine. Vada for look, omi for man, palair meaning to speak, which is where the whole thing gets its name. Fantabulosa, which is almost too obvious, almost to itself. Scarpa for run, rhea for hair, cove for man. The numbers 1 to 10, replacing their English originals when someone needs to say something about money or time without being understood. It sounds like nonsense to an uninitiated ear. It sounds like the particular nonsense of theatre people, of fairground workers, the slightly performative argot of people who work outside respectable employment. And that is exactly what it is, and exactly what it isn't. When Pierce says, in front of you, that the new cove at the stage door is bona to Vada and gives Crawford the look, you understand it. Crawford gives Pierce the look back, and you understand that too. And Pierce sees you understand and offers you a small nod that costs him nothing and means, in its way, a great deal. You're being recognised. This is the feeling you were trying to find words for. Lying in your bed in Clerkenwell looking at the ceiling crack. It is not what you thought it would feel like. You thought recognition would feel like relief. It feels like something sharper than relief. It feels like the sensation just after removing a boot that has been too tight all day. The relief that is almost indistinguishable from pain, because your foot has been so long in the wrong shape that the right shape takes some getting used to. You're 22. You have been in the wrong shape since you were 16. Give yourself a moment. The Polari is not only vocabulary, it is also a way of knowing. When you hear it from a stranger, and you do, eventually, hear it from a stranger, at a bar in Soho where Morrison takes you one Saturday evening, where the barman responds to your order with a word that is not an English word, but that you understand. The word is not just a communication. It is a credential. It is a handshake. It is a small, precise test. He uses one word from the language. You respond with another. He offers the third. And that exchange, 30 seconds, 3 words, is the equivalent of a letter of introduction. Safer than a letter of introduction, because a letter can be found and read by the wrong person. But a conversation in a language the wrong person cannot follow is a letter that burns the moment it's spoken. The bar in Soho is called the Crown, or it is commonly referred to as the Crown. Its actual name is something else, something entirely unremarkable above the door. But within a particular geography of a particular city it is known by a different name, a name passed between people by word of mouth, by the kind of careful, trusted communication that cannot be written down. The inside is low-ceilinged and warm. Tobacco smoke, gas lamps, the smell of beer, and the slight sweetness underneath of something you cannot immediately identify. Pine, maybe. Sawdust on the floor. The clientele looks, to any passing eye, entirely ordinary. Men of various ages drinking, some standing, some seated. Nothing remarkable. Nothing observable. except if you have learned to look the ease again, that particular ease, the conversations in pairs and small groups that lean toward each other slightly, the laughter that does not perform itself for the room, the way a man can rest his hand on another man's arm without the slight self-consciousness that you have spent 6 years noticing men perform when they're anywhere else in the city. You sit with Morrison at a table near the wall. You have a glass of porter. You're seeing it, Morrison says. Not a question. Yes. How long have you known? You consider the question. That this existed. Or you. The word sits on the table between you like a very small, very significant object. Since I was 16, you say. Morrison nods. He is not surprised. Nothing surprises Morrison. You're beginning to understand this as a deliberate quality rather than a natural one. Morrison has practiced unsurprisability the way you have practiced invisibility. Different strategies, same underlying requirement. It takes time, he says, to learn the map of where it is safe, what the signals mean, who can be trusted. He takes a drink. I've been in London for 4 years. There are places I know well, places I know a little, and places I stay away from. What determines the difference? Police, he says simply. Then, after a pause, and blackmailers. The blackmailers are often worse than the police in practice. You know about the blackmailers. You know about the blackmailers the way you know about certain weather events. In theory, with the awareness that theory could become experience at any moment. Men who know the codes, who move through the same geography, who are not what you are, but who have learned to pass well enough to be trusted, and who use that trust to extract money. A letter, a specific, precise letter, not mentioning any crime explicitly, but making clear by implication what knowledge it contains and what publication of that knowledge would cost a man. His employment, his lodgings, his family, his name. The letters ask for money, always a specific amount, sometimes manageable, the kind of amount that can be quietly produced without borrowing. Because the writer has calculated what you can lose, and the amount asked is calibrated to the calculation. A little less than what you could bear to part with, so you part with it. And then another letter comes. The word is extortion. The practice is ancient. The particular version targeted at men like you is so common, so structured, so almost bureaucratic in its operation, that it has attracted its own vocabulary. Queer rolling, blackmailing on the cross, the systematic exploitation of a law that criminalizes private behavior and therefore gives criminals leverage over respectable people. A man cannot go to the police. A man cannot go to the police and say, someone is threatening to expose me for conduct that is itself a criminal offence. The law offers you no protection when your secret is criminal. The law is the mechanism by which your secret is valuable. You understand this geometry. You have understood it for years in the abstract. Sitting at a table in Soho drinking porter, understanding it in the specific is different. Have you? You start, stop, begin again. Has anyone you know? Hartley, Morrison says. He paid twice. Then he left London. You think of Hartley, the watchful man from the reading group, the one who assessed you. He's all right. He's in Edinburgh. He writes occasionally. You drink your porter. Outside, November. London continues. Horses. Fog. The distant sound of a barrel organ. How do you manage it, you ask? The balance. Being, living your life, and also being safe. Morrison is quiet for a moment. He turns his glass. Carefully, he says. You learn the rules, not all at once, bit by bit. You learn which parks are safe after which hours and which are not. You learn which faces you have seen before and which ones you haven't. You learn which men can be trusted and which ones have a certain quality to them. A way of looking at you that isn't the look you want. A look that's calculating something. He looks at you directly. And you learn to trust your instincts about people. Your instincts are likely better than you think. You've been reading rooms your whole life. This is true. You've been reading rooms since you were 16, since before that. What about Alderton, the reading group? Entirely safe. Alderton's been doing it for 6 years. He knows the rules better than anyone. Nobody talks about anything they shouldn't. Nobody brings anyone who hasn't been introduced properly. Introduced properly. The phrase has a whole architecture inside it. How was I introduced? I vouched for you, Morrison says. That's the system. Someone vouches. Alderton trusts my judgment. If he didn't, you'd have come for one evening of entirely normal literary discussion, and then the invitations would have stopped. And he trusted your judgment because someone vouched for me when I was where you are now. The chain goes back, link by link. A network built entirely on trust, on the careful accumulated evidence that this person is who they appear to be, that this person is safe, that this person has too much to lose to be casual about what they are being trusted with. You think about how long it would take to build a network like this, how it must begin. 2 people in a room or on a street or in a park, making the most careful calculation of their lives and deciding, yes, this one I'll risk. And then 2 becoming 3 and 3 becoming 10, and the rules evolving and the signals evolving and the map being passed imperfectly and incompletely from one pair of careful hands to the next for generations. You think, these people were doing this when my grandfather was young, when his grandfather was young, when the word for what they were was a death sentence and the solution was the same as it is now, more or less. Find your kind, learn the code, be careful. The burden of that thought sits in your chest beside the second heartbeat. Morrison finishes his porter. There's something I should tell you, he says, about how the signalling works, not just the Polari, the other system. You lean slightly forward. The handkerchief, he says. He explains it without quite explaining it, in the way of all explanations that cannot be explicit. He explains it in the form of a general description, the general principle, the left versus the right, the pocket placement, the colour, the meaning of each colour. He is not describing his own behaviour. He is describing an interesting social phenomenon he has observed. You follow the explanation. You store it. The precision of it surprises you. The colour blue meaning this, green meaning that, red, yellow. The left pocket versus the right, which functions as a kind of grammar, a modifier that changes the meaning of the base signal. The layering of colour and position producing a language that is entirely legible in a public space, in daylight, to the people who know the language, and entirely invisible to the people who do not. You think about it in terms of codes. You think about the way the language you copy every day, legal language, the language of conveyances and agreements, carries 2 registers, the plain meaning and the precise legal meaning, and how a layman can read a legal document and understand all the words and entirely miss the function. The handkerchief code operates the same way. A man walking through a park carrying a handkerchief in his left breast pocket is, to most eyes, carrying a handkerchief. The pocket is irrelevant. The colour is irrelevant. These are not the right eyes. But to other eyes the message is precise. Who invented it, you ask? Morrison shrugs. Nobody. Everybody. It grew, like the Polari, like everything in this world. Nothing declared, nothing published, nothing official. All of it grown from necessity and modified by experience and passed along with the particular care of something that must not be written down. The difficulty of not writing things down is that things do not transmit perfectly in oral form. Errors creep in. Regional variations develop. What means something specific in one city means something slightly different in another, or means the same thing with slight variations in the protocol, which is just different enough to cause confusion. You will learn this later, when you meet men from other cities, when you encounter the slight friction of different local codes, the polite negotiation of two systems that grew up separately, two dialects of the same language meeting on a street corner. But for now, in this bar in Soho, in the warm fog of tobacco and porter, what you have is the beginning of the map, a portion of it, the part that covers Bloomsbury and this street, and the Lyceum Theatre, and, Morrison mentions carefully, a particular section of Hyde Park on Thursday afternoons, which he describes as a place where men of a literary inclination sometimes walk, and you understand him. You walk home late. The streets are dark, the gas lamps creating pools of amber separated by stretches of near black, the fog thick enough to taste. You walk carefully, knowing the route, knowing which corners to take wide. A link boy in an earlier century would have helped you. You do not need a link boy. You know the streets. You have learned the streets. But what you learn tonight is a different kind of street. Invisible streets. Existing on the same geography as the visible ones, but running through different coordinates. The Crown. The Park. The Reading Group. The particular bar on the other side of Soho that Morrison mentioned but said was less safe, less carefully managed, where the clientele was less careful. You will not go there. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. The map is drawn in your head now, in pencil, very light, erasable. The next few weeks teach you more than the previous 14 months. You begin to see the other signals, the ones that are not part of the explicit code Morrison explained, but that belong to the same system, that grew up alongside it and share its underlying logic. The way a certain kind of man meets your eye and holds it for slightly too long, not in the aggressive or challenging way, but in the manner of a question being asked, the way you can return that gaze and with nothing more than the return of it, the answering of the question, indicate that you have received it. The way the next move depends on where you are and what risk the geography contains. In the office, which is not safe at all and about which you're extremely careful, there is Morrison. You're learning to read Morrison. The ways in which his caution expresses itself, the particular precision of his neutral expression. You know what is under that expression now. It is not so different from what is under yours. The second heartbeat, the work of management. You're also learning what other people in your life do not know about you, and you are thinking about this more carefully than before. Mrs. Partridge, who knows you are a copying clerk from Manchester, and that you do not entertain visitors, and that you are very punctual with the rent. Benson and Hatch and Fletcher in the office, the baker, the newsagent. They have built a picture of you. It is a real picture. The things in it are true. James Whitmore, 22, clerk, Manchester, punctual, quiet, no obvious vices. The picture simply omits the most important thing. The secondary heartbeat, the ceiling crack. These 6 years of management, the reading group on Thursday evenings, the bar in Soho, the map in pencil. This is what you are. Not a fraud, not a deceiver in any important sense. The omission is not dishonesty. The omission is survival. You think about this on the walk to the office one morning in December. The streets cold and dry and the puddles beginning to have a skim of ice on them. You think, every person you pass on this street is managing an omission of some kind. Some larger than yours, some smaller. The man in the too fast walk at 5 a.m, Mrs. Partridge, who has a brother no one visits, Fletcher, who drinks from a flask and whose hand shakes slightly some mornings, Benson, who falls asleep at his desk and whose eyes, on the rare occasions he discusses his home life, have a quality of careful neutrality that you have learned to recognize as its own kind of management. You are not alone in having things you do not show. You are simply managing a specific thing that the law has decided is worth prosecuting. In December, you begin to understand the park. Morrison has mentioned it. Alderton has alluded to it. Pierce, who is the most open person in the group, who has a quality of comfortable self-disclosure that you envy and find alarming in roughly equal measure, tells you about the park without any illusion at all. Directly. In the kitchen at Alderton's flat after everyone else has gone. Hyde Park, Pierce says, he's washing cups. The South End near the Serpentine, afternoons, particularly on the days with decent light. You'll know what to look for. Because I know what to look for now. You're learning fast. I'm a fast learner. This is true. It has always been true. The law firm in Manchester promoted you twice in 3 years on the basis of it. You absorb systems quickly. You find the underlying logic. This code has underlying logic. The main thing, Pierce says, is to trust your sense of a situation. If it feels wrong, it is wrong. Your instincts for wrongness are better than your reason at this point, because your reason has a habit of finding ways to ignore what your instincts know. That's the trap. He hands you a cup to dry. What kind of wrong, you ask? Any kind. A man who comes to you too quickly, who seems too eager, who asks questions that don't fit the register of the conversation. There are men who are, he pauses selecting the word, employed by police, or as their own enterprise, who learn the signals and use them to entrap. You know about entrapment. You know about it theoretically. You think about it differently now. How do you know? In the moment? You don't always. That's the honest answer. He stacks the cups. That's why you learn to be very slow, very gradual. You take weeks where someone else would take hours. You make it expensive in time for anyone who wants to entrap you, because a man who is patient and willing to wait and move slowly is not useful to a policeman or a blackmailer on a schedule. Slow, patient, gradual, the same principles as the code itself. You think about how the code was built this way for the same reason everything in this world is built the same way, because haste costs lives. Thursday again, Alderton's flat. Vane has brought a new painting he's working on, a preparatory sketch which is passed around and examined. The figures in it are close together. The way Vane has drawn the light on them suggests a kind of warmth. Nobody comments on this specifically. Everyone sees it. Crawford reads from a new poem. It is long. The metre is careful and the imagery is botanical. Gardens, cultivation, things growing in specific conditions. Everyone listens. When he finishes, there is a silence that is appreciative rather than empty. Bellamy, who has said little for 3 meetings, says, "The wall, the image of the wall in the second section, where the thing growing has to find its way around the obstacle." "Yes," Crawford says, "that's the best thing in it." Crawford looks at Bellamy with the expression of someone who's been understood precisely. You listen. You drink tea. You begin to feel. in this warm room with these men who have all chosen the same Thursday evening over and over, something beginning to loosen in your chest. Not the second heartbeat, that is always there, but the management of it, the concentrated effort of management. You can feel it relaxing by fractions. You're still careful. You will be careful for a long time. That does not go away, you understand. The caution is part of what you are now. It is built into you. The habit of reading rooms and managing faces and choosing words. The habit, Morrison told you once, flat and direct, of never putting anything in writing. Never put anything in writing. In the age of letters, in the age when social life is organised through correspondence, when men write to each other about everything from business matters to lunch arrangements to the state of their souls, the men in these rooms write nothing. There are no love letters. There are no notes passed. There are no references in diaries to the evenings at Alderton's, to the bar in Soho, to the park. Diaries exist. Some of these men keep them. But in their diaries they are ordinary men going about ordinary evenings, a reading group, a walk, dinner with a friend. The actual content of the evenings lives only in their memories, and memory is the safest place. Memory cannot be found in a coat pocket during a police search. Memory cannot be presented as evidence. Memory belongs only to you. There is a particular quality of sadness in this that you will not fully understand for some years, because you are 22 and relatively new to it. The sadness is the impermanence that this requires. When you cannot write things down, you cannot build the record that love normally builds. You cannot go back and read the letter someone wrote to you at 22. You cannot show your grandchildren the correspondence of your youth. The proof of your life as it was lived disappears with you. The men who lived before you left almost nothing. In the records they do not exist except as criminals, in court documents and newspaper articles. The record of who they were, what they felt, how they found each other and recognized each other and built these careful invisible lives, that record is almost entirely gone. What remains is accident, a letter not fully destroyed, a diary coded carefully enough to avoid destruction, a few extraordinary documents produced by men of means and education and great literary ability who found ways to hide the record in plain sight in poetry and fiction and mythology. But most of it is gone. You are living in an undocumented world, and part of what makes it undocumented is that documentation is dangerous. The year moves through December. Christmas at the office is modest. A meat pie, supplied by the firm, eaten at lunch. Benson produces a small bottle of port from a desk drawer and pours a glass for everyone, including Fletcher, who looks at it with the complex expression of someone who is both delighted and trying to hide how much he needs it. Hatch makes a toast to the firm, which has been making toast to itself for 20 years and has the routine down. Morrison catches your eye across the room, just for a moment, just long enough to exchange the particular currency of two people who share a private knowledge in a public space, the currency of, I see you, you see me. We are both standing here in this ordinary way, and being, beneath the ordinary surface, entirely ourselves, just for a moment. Then the surface closes. You spend Christmas itself in Clerkenwell. Mrs. Partridge does a goose, which is impressive given the size of her kitchen and the number of lodgers. The goose is overcooked, but the gravy is excellent, and there is a pudding. Mr. Everton tells a story about a patent medicine convention he attended that is, you're fairly certain, largely invented. The other lodger, a Miss Fenwick who gives piano lessons and keeps a cat, eats with a quality of contentment that you find admirable and slightly mysterious. You eat and drink and are warm and fed and manage to feel, for the duration of the meal, something relatively close to ordinary. That evening you write to your mother, a proper letter about work and the weather and Mrs. Partridge's goose. You do not mention Alderton or Morrison or the bar in Soho. You do not mention the map in pencil. You tell her that London is agreeing with you, which is true in ways she will not understand. January comes, cold, grey, the streets icy in the mornings. You are learning the park, not learning it in the sense of regularly using it. You are too new to this, too careful, too aware of the risks Pearce described, but learning it in the sense of understanding its geography, walking it on Sunday afternoons, learning which paths attract which kinds of people, learning the particular quality of a certain kind of attention, the look that holds a beat too long, the slight adjustment of pace when two men approach each other on a path, the way certain benches are occupied in certain ways. The park is an extraordinary thing as a system. It is entirely public. Anyone can walk here. Families walk here. Nannies push perambulators. Men of business walk here for their constitutionals. Dogs are walked. Children feed ducks. And running through all of this like a river beneath a river, invisible and regular and fed by decades of accumulated knowledge, is the other map, the other park. The park that exists in a specific time window and in a specific section of the geography, and operates according to rules that have been built by necessity and maintained by collective understanding. You are walking through it with the specific quality of double vision that you are developing. You can see the ordinary park and the other park simultaneously. The topographic overlay. Same bench, two different benches. Same path, two different paths. You think about the men who first drew this map, who decided that this section of the park, this time of day, these signals would be the system, not any individual person. This was not decided. This accumulated. A few people at a certain time of day, and then more people at the same time, and then a few more, and gradually the time and place became known, passed along the chain of careful trust, and became established. Permanent, reliable. Permanent until it isn't. This is the other thing you are learning. Reliability has limits. Things that have been established for years can be destroyed in an afternoon. A police action, a newspaper story, a single arrest that makes the location unsafe. And then the geography shifts, the map redraws itself, the time window changes, the section of the park changes. The community, if you can call it that, and you're beginning to think you can call it that, the community relocates and reconstitutes. The resilience of the system is the resilience of the community. It cannot be fully destroyed because it cannot be fully located. You cannot close a room that has no walls. February. Alderton's reading group is discussing Tennyson, about whom people have strong opinions. The discussion becomes animated. Pearce stands up at one point, which is unusual for Pearce. Tom from the kitchen floor says something that stops the conversation entirely for a moment, and then starts it again at a higher level. It is one of the better evenings. Afterward, staying late, you help Alderton with the washing up. He's a comfortable man to be alone with in a kitchen. He has the quality of people who are at home in their own skin. "You've settled in," he says. "I think so. Morrison tells me you're a careful man." "I try to be. It's the most important thing." He rinses a cup. "More important than being clever. More important than being well connected. Careful. Do you know what careful means practically?" You wait. "It means you tell no one who hasn't already told themselves. You let other people make the first move. always. You never put the name of this place or any place in writing. You never bring anyone here without my knowledge and approval. If you meet someone in the other geography and the thing develops, you make sure, completely sure, before anything else happens. You take months, not days. He hands you the cup to dry. I've lost 2 friends, he says. In the last decade, 2 men I knew well, one to prison, 2 years hard labour. He was never the same, one to the blackmailers who took enough money that he had to sell everything and start again in another city. I do not intend to lose anyone else. The word friends carries a weight you understand, not only friends. The law, you say. The 1885 Act. The Labouchere Amendment. He says it with a particular flatness. Yes, before that, the law required a specific act, evidence of a specific thing. After 1885, any act of gross indecency, which means anything, any touch, any letter that can be interpreted, any meeting that can be described a certain way. He turns off the tap. Henry Labouchere put that clause in the Criminal Law Amendment Act. He thought it was a joke, a jab at upper-class men who could afford to buy what working men only dreamed of. He called it the Blackmailers' Charter later. He wasn't entirely wrong. The blackmailers use it directly. They use the threat of it. The actual legal exposure is secondary to the social exposure for most men. The social exposure would ruin you faster than the prison sentence. This is something you've understood in theory for years. In the context of Alderton's kitchen, after Alderton's detailed accounting of people he has lost, the theory has a different weight. What do, you ask, with the fear of it? Alderton is quiet for a moment. He dries his hands. You build the life you want to build, he says, as carefully and completely as you can, and you try not to let the fear be larger than the life. He goes back to the sitting room, where Tom has revived the fire and is reading. You stand in the kitchen for another moment. You're holding a damp cup. The gaslight above you gives the small room a warm amber quality. Outside the window, February London is dark and cold. You try not to let the fear be larger than the life. You're 22. You have the map in pencil. You have Morrison at 11 feet in the office and Thursday evenings with Pater and Ruskin and the warm weight of being in a room full of people who are entirely what they are. You are learning. March. Something happens in March that you will remember for the rest of your life. You're in the park, Sunday afternoon. The light is tentative, March light, which can't decide if it wants to be winter or spring, and oscillates between the two with an irritability that keeps everyone slightly on edge. You're walking the south path near the Serpentine because you've been doing this for 2 months now, and you've begun to read the geography well. There is a man sitting on a bench. He is perhaps 40, well dressed but not ostentatiously so. A walking stick leaned against the bench beside him, not because he needs it, but because it is fashionable. He is reading a book, or appearing to read a book. The book, you notice, has been on the same page for some minutes. He looks up as you approach, and the look. You know the look. You have learned the look. You give it back to him. He does not look away. You do not sit on the bench. You walk past, at the correct pace, not hurrying, not lingering, just walking, the way men walk in parks on Sunday afternoons. But you have communicated something, and he has communicated something back. This is the system working. You walk the full circuit of the path. 15 minutes. When you come back, he's still there, still on the same page. You sit on the bench, not close, at the normal distance, a public bench, shared in the ordinary way. There is a silence of perhaps 2 minutes. Entirely normal in London. Two people sharing a public bench without speaking. Cold for March, he says. It's hesitating, you say, like England. He glances at you. A slight smile. A small code inside the ordinary conversation. England hesitating over what it might become, what it might allow, what it is and is not. You talk for a few minutes. Ordinary conversation. Weather. The park. A play that's currently on. None of it means what it appears to mean, and all of it means what it appears to mean. Both things are true. His name is, he tells you, William. He is a doctor. He's been in London for 15 years, from Edinburgh originally. He comes to the park on Sundays when the weather permits. You are careful. You are very careful. You give him very little. But what you give him is accurate. James, a clerk, not long in London. He nods at each of these. He is reading you with the same precision you are reading him. He says eventually, there's a gathering next Saturday. A small dinner, well managed. He gives you an address. 7 o'clock, if you're interested. You remember Pierce's instruction. Trust your instincts. And your instincts are saying, yes, this man has been doing what you are learning to do for 15 years. And the evidence of it is in how he handles this conversation, the pace, the layers, the precision of the information he offers. Perhaps, you say, no obligation, he says, and goes back to his book. You sit for another minute, then you stand, you nod. He nods. You walk away. You tell Morrison about it at the office on Monday, in the particular way of telling Morrison things which is oblique and brief, and happens between copying tasks while Benson is examining a document and Hatch is occupied. Morrison knows William, in the way of this world, in the way of all carefully built networks of careful people. Morrison knows him peripherally. He's reliable, Morrison says. One word, delivered to a document, and then no more. You go to the dinner on Saturday. The address is a townhouse in Marylebone, a house of comfortable size. Nothing grand, nothing showy. A house that belongs to a man of professional income, well organised, not keen to draw attention. The door is answered by a manservant who knows to let you in without ceremony. The dinner is 11 people, a variety. Some you know, William, and another man from the park whom you recognise without having spoken to, and who registers your presence with the slight adjustment of expression that means recognised. Some you do not know. A barrister. 2 men who appear to be from the artistic world by the quality of their clothes and the way they talk with their hands. A doctor, not William, a different doctor. An older man with the specific weariness of someone who has seen too much and decided to feel everything anyway. And a man who is introduced to you simply as Oscar, not Oscar Wilde. You know about Oscar Wilde. Everyone knows about Oscar Wilde, the famous wit, the plays, the lectures, the green carnation. But this Oscar is not him. This Oscar is younger, thinner, quieter than you would expect a man named Oscar to be in any circle connected to the other Oscar's name. He is a painter. He works very large canvases. He tells you when you ask. Larger than the room would comfortably hold. Mostly landscapes. What do you put in the landscapes, you ask? What they want me to put in. For the buyers. He pauses. And underneath that, what I want to put in. For myself. You understand this immediately. The overlay. The visible painting and the other painting. The one readable to ordinary eyes, and the one underneath it, which is the real thing. Do people notice? The second layer? The right people do. You eat dinner. The food is very good. Someone knows how to cook, or someone has hired someone who knows how to cook, and the result is a roast that has been given the proper time and care. You're aware of being hungry in a way that the work week and Mrs. Partridge's adequate cooking does not usually allow you to be. You eat well. You drink a moderate amount of wine. You listen to the conversation, which operates on multiple levels simultaneously, which you're getting better at following. There is a point about halfway through the evening when you realize that you have not, in the last 20 minutes, managed anything. You have been talking, listening, eating, existing in this room among these men, and you have simply been doing it. The face you are wearing is your face. The conversation you are having is your conversation. You have not calibrated your response to the mention of anything. You have not rooted around any thought. You have not performed the small, continuous maintenance of the self that has been your constant occupation since you were 16 years old. The feeling is extraordinary. It is the boot removal feeling again, but steadier. Not just for a moment, for 20 minutes, for the rest of the evening. You walk home at midnight with the particular quality of exhaustion that is different from the exhaustion of management. This is the exhaustion of actually being somewhere, of using your actual self rather than the managed version. It is more tiring and enormously less tiring at the same time. A productive exhaustion, the kind that comes from building something rather than from maintaining something. You lie in your bed. You look at the ceiling crack. The crack is the same. But something has shifted in the room, or in you, such that the ceiling crack no longer functions in quite the same way. It is still there, but it is no longer the entire focus of your awareness in the hours before sleep. There is more in the room now, or more of you is in the room. You think about the map. It is no longer entirely pencil. Some parts have been inked in. The Thursday evenings, the bar in Soho, the park, the dinner in Marylebone, the faces, the names, the language growing in you like something planted in the right conditions, slowly, with patience, reaching up. Spring comes properly. April. The park is different in spring. The decision winter couldn't make has finally been made in favour of warmth, and the serpentine is blue instead of grey, and the chestnuts are in leaf, and the same south path has a completely different quality. More people, more light, the window tighter. You have to be more precise about when and how, because the increased visibility cuts both ways. The benefit of daylight for reading faces is offset by the increased chance of being seen by someone you would rather not be seen by. You are learning these calibrations. They are second nature to nobody, ever. They require continued attention. But the attention is becoming more skilled, which means it is less effortful. You are building the same muscle memory for reading a situation that you have built for copying a document. The hand moves without consciously being directed. The eye notices without consciously being told to notice. You think about how long this has been going on. Not your personally, but the whole system. The codes, and the Polari, and the parks, and the Molly houses. Let me stop you here for a moment, because Molly houses need explaining, and they need explaining properly. The Molly house. The term comes from the early 1700s. Molly was slang. It has disputed origins, possibly from the Latin mollis, meaning soft, meaning something about a particular kind of man. A Molly, in 18th century slang, was a man who loved other men, and a Molly house was where they gathered. A Molly house was, in practice, a room or a set of rooms, often at the back of a tavern or an inn, or in a private house, where men who knew the signs could come and be among others who knew the signs. Drink, talk, dance sometimes, in the relative safety of four walls and a door that could be locked and trusted company on all sides. The original molly houses go back to at least the early 1700s. London had them. Other cities had them. They were raided periodically. There are court records of raids from the 1720s, from the 1750s, from the 1800s. Men were arrested. Some were executed. In the earlier decades, the penalty was death, and it was carried out. The houses were closed, the men scattered, and within months, in different locations with slightly different configurations, the houses reopened. Because where else would they go? This is the function of the molly house that you understand now in a way that would not have been available to you 14 months ago. It is not a luxury. It is not a recreation. It is a necessity created by the combination of human need and legal prohibition. When you make something criminal, you do not destroy it. You drive it underground, and underground it develops the specific characteristics of underground things: extreme caution, efficient communication, redundancy, the ability to move and reconstitute. The molly houses of your time are not called molly houses. That term is old-fashioned now. What they are is a range of things: private rooms at trusted addresses, back rooms at certain pubs that have been assessed carefully, specific clubs, specific gatherings at private houses, like the dinner in Marylebone, like Alderton's flat on Thursdays. The form has evolved. The function is the same, and the function is a room where you can put the face down, even if only for an evening, even if only partially. You are 22. You have found the room. May. You've been going to the reading group for 5 months, and the park for 3, and the bar in Soho twice more, and the dinner in Marylebone 4 times. You've learned more Polari. You've learned the handkerchief code well enough to use it and recognise it. You've learned the green carnation and the specific quality of eye contact that functions as a door being opened. You've learned which places in the city operate on the double geography and which do not. And you have learned one more thing, the most important and the most complicated: when to proceed and when to stop. This is the hardest lesson, because the stopping requires you to override a need that has been deferred for 6 years. That has the force of 6 years of pressure behind it. And to say, not this one, not yet, not here. The timing is wrong. The person is unread. The risk is unquantified. It requires a precision of self-management that goes beyond anything you've practiced before. It requires being able to feel the thing clearly and still assess it clearly. Feeling and thinking simultaneously, each one maintaining its integrity without overriding the other. Pierce is your tutor in this, in the way Pierce tutors everything, directly and without comfort. The men who have been arrested, he says one evening, the 2 of you at the bar in Soho, or blackmailed. Do you want to know the pattern? Yes. Haste, almost always. They moved before they were sure. They were certain they were reading the situation correctly, and they were wrong. A policeman who has learned the signs can imitate the signs very well. A blackmailer who has been doing this for 3 years is better at performing trust than most people are at performing anything. How do you know the difference? Pace. A policeman or a blackmailer needs the thing to happen quickly. They have schedules. They have quotas. They have the practical pressure of a man doing a job. An honest man, he turns his glass. An honest man has no schedule. He can afford to wait. He will wait as long as necessary because the waiting is part of the thing, not an obstacle to it. This reframes the slowness, not a limitation, a characteristic, a signal even. A man who insists on moving quickly is not a man you should trust in this geography. A man who is comfortable with weeks of careful, gradual, oblique development is a man who is doing it for the right reason. And if you're wrong, you ask, if you're slow and careful and you still get it wrong? Pierce is quiet for a moment. Then you deal with what comes, the same as all the others dealt with it, as well as you can. There is nothing comforting about this. It is not meant to be comforting. It is the truth, stated as plainly as the truth about anything in this world is ever stated. June. Summer arrives. The office is warm. The windows are opened and the sounds of Gray's Inn filter up. Pigeons, cartwheels, someone practicing a violin on a floor above. Benson still falls asleep. Fletcher is less pale. Hatch has developed a slight tan from what turns out to be, according to information I give you via Benson, a new habit of walking in the parks on his lunch hour. Morrison tells you one afternoon, during a pause in copying, that he will be leaving the firm at the end of July. A position has become available at a publisher's, an editorial role. He has been hoping for something like this for some time. You receive this information with a particular quality of response that you are learning to deploy. Genuine feeling, managed surface. That's good news, you say. Yes. He is straightening the pages of a document. The Thursday evenings continue regardless. And you know the map. You know the map. Good luck, you say. Thank you. A pause. You'll be all right. You believe him. Morrison leaves at the end of July. A new clerk arrives in August. A boy from somewhere in Kent, 19 years old, who is bewildered by London and shows it in a way that you recognise from 14 months ago and that you find both sympathetic and, perhaps, useful. You are not Morrison. You will not observe this boy for 14 months and then invite him to a reading group. You do not know anything about him. You will not assume, but you watch with the eyes you have built, and you file what you observe. The summer passes through its stages. The heat in the office, the park on Sundays, the Serpentine bright in the sun, the paths busy with ordinary London going about its ordinary summer business. The dinner in Marylebone continues. You have become a regular, known, trusted face there. William and you have developed something that occupies the space between acquaintance and friendship, something careful and gradual, which is the correct way. The art, and you're beginning to think of it as an art, of the gradual, of the thing that develops across weeks and months, slowly, without pressure, taking the shape it wants to take. This is not how you were taught to think about these things. The version of these things available in literature, in the rare places where they exist in literature, is all speed and urgency and overwhelming feeling. The reality in this city, in this time, is the opposite. The beauty of the gradual, the extraordinary quality of something built slowly, carefully, with full attention given to every stage. There are men you know who've been together in this careful way for 10 years, 15 years, who have built domestic arrangements that fit inside the larger architecture of respectable life, living together as professional associates, as friends sharing lodgings, as men sharing a house for practical economic reasons, and who within that visible arrangement have built something invisible and entirely real, permanent, committed, with the depth of long shared history and chosen continuity. The law cannot touch what cannot be seen, and what cannot be seen can still be real. You find this more remarkable the longer you think about it, the ingenuity of it, the adaptability, the way these men have taken the constraints they were born into and built, within those constraints, the lives they actually wanted to live, not despite the constraints, sometimes actually because of them, because the constraint that requires you to be careful about what you build makes you build it more carefully, makes you be more certain, makes the thing, once built, something you have thought about and chosen fully. This is not an argument in favour of the law. The law is wrong. The law will be wrong for another 73 years after your time, and it will cost an incalculable number of lives in ways you cannot imagine. Living in 1894, the human cost of making lives criminal. People who will never find the map, who will live in isolated rooms with second heartbeats, and no Thursday evenings and no bar in Soho, and no name for what they are. The cost of that cannot be tallied. It is too large and too intimate. But there is something worth noting, something the men in Alderton's sitting room have understood, and that you are beginning to understand, in the quality of a life built with this much deliberateness, this much choice, every piece of it selected, verified, trusted. Nothing casual, nothing thoughtless, the full weight of attention given to everything. Attention. That word from the Pater essay, the one Crawford discussed on your first evening, burning with a hard gem-like flame. The fullness of attention given to experience. You could not have fully understood that essay 4 months ago in the way you understand it now. September. The air changes. The particular quality of a London autumn, which is different from Manchester autumn, heavier, more textured, the cold smoke beginning to return in earnest. You're approaching your second year in London. You do not feel like the man who arrived 14 months ago. You feel not entirely different. The second heartbeat is still there. The management is still required in most of your day. But the ratio has changed. The proportion of your day that is purely managed versus the proportion that is genuinely inhabited has shifted. There is more genuine inhabitation now. You have the Thursday evenings. You have the dinner in Marylebone. You have William, who is careful and thoughtful and from Edinburgh, and with whom the gradual thing is developing at exactly the right pace, which you will only know is the right pace in retrospect, but which feels, in the present, like the right pace. You have the language, more of it every week. The Polari has grown in you like a vocabulary for a country you did not know you were going to live in. It has become part of your internal voice, the way all absorbed languages do. When you think about certain things now, you think in it. Bona, Naf, Vada, the numbers, the small poetry of a language that had to be built from pieces of other languages because it could not have one of its own. You have the map, inked in now, more of it every month. Not just London. You have begun to understand from William and from conversations at the dinner that the map exists everywhere. Every city has its version. The code's not identical. There are enough local variations to require careful recalibration when you change location. But the principles are the same. The double geography, the recognizable signs, the pace and patience of it, the careful chain of trust. The map is old, older than you knew. The molly houses are old. The language is old. Men have been finding each other in this city for as long as there have been men and cities. You are part of something that goes back further than any record proves, because the records were destroyed, because the people who held the records knew to destroy them. But it is there in the silence, in the gaps between the court records, in the absence of documentation that is itself a kind of documentation, the negative space of an entire population that learned to be invisible and mostly succeeded. You walk to the office in the September morning, the air damp and coal-scented, the streets moving in their London way. You buy chestnuts from the same corner as last November. The woman knows you now, not as anything specific, just as a person who buys chestnuts on cold mornings, which is enough to make you known. She hands them over without waiting for you to ask. A small, reliable transaction. The ordinary social architecture of a city. You carry the chestnuts and walk. The streets are complicated. The same streets you've been walking for 14 months are different streets now. Not the streets themselves, the map you carry for them. You know where you are, in every sense of the phrase. October. And something changes in London. It is not immediate. It builds the way weather builds, the way the specific quality of grey before a particular kind of storm is recognisable to people who've been paying attention. You notice it first at the dinner in Marylebone, in a particular quality of quiet that has come into the room that was not there before. The barrister, who you've come to know as careful and extremely well informed, a man who moves in legal and political circles and whose conversation carries accurate current intelligence, says something at the end of the evening that you carry home with you. He says, "There is a case building. I don't have the specifics yet, but the shape of it." He does not complete the sentence. He does not need to. He's talking about something legal, a case, something that is building with the specific momentum of something that has been set in motion with institutional weight behind it. The law, the crown, the machinery of prosecution. You do not know yet what the case is. Nobody at the dinner knows the specifics. But the quality of careful attention that everyone in the room brings to their lives, the quality that makes them all very good at reading early signs, has been activated. The quality of a park where the birds have gone quiet before rain. You tell yourself it is probably nothing direct. Cases are built all the time. Men are arrested and tried. This has been true for years, for decades. The law has been there since 1885. The raids, the entrapment, the occasional high-profile prosecution. These are continuous features of this landscape. You cannot live in this geography without knowing they are there. But something in the barrister's tone. November. Your second November in London. The same fog. The same skim of ice on morning puddles. The same grey. But everything else is different from the first November. The information comes in pieces. From William, who knows people in medical circles who know people everywhere. From Pierce, who is at the Lyceum and hears everything. From Elderton, who reads everything printed in the city and has the ability to read between the lines of newspapers with great precision. The case is against a man who is, and this is the part that changes the weight of everything, famous, not obscure, not a private individual. A man whose name everyone in England knows. A man whose wit has made the whole country laugh. A man who has been, in the particular version of this game that operates at the highest social level, entirely visible, openly connected to a certain kind of beauty, openly affectionate with beautiful young men in ways that aristocratic connections and brilliant conversation and the general indulgence of fame have made possible. A man who, in his visibility, was the most visible member of the most invisible community in England. Oscar Wilde. You know this name. Everyone knows this name. You know the importance of being earnest is playing now. You have walked past the theatre. You know Lady Windermere's fan. You know the stories about Wilde in society. The brilliant remarks, the personality so large it fills rooms and newspaper columns, and the imaginations of people who have never met him. You know the green carnation. You are 22 years old. Wilde is 39. He's connected to a young man from an aristocratic family. The young man's father, the Marquis of Queensberry, a man of violent temper and very little patience for subtlety, has been escalating a campaign against Wilde for months. And Wilde, who's been surrounded by fame and affection and aristocratic immunity for so long that he may have genuinely miscalculated the solidity of the ground beneath him. Wilde has made a catastrophic error. He has sued Queensberry for criminal libel. He has brought the thing into the open. He has brought it into a court of law where it will be examined and where the evidence that Queensberry's lawyers will produce, the young men, the hotel records, the letters, will be turned against him. The barrister at Marylebone told you in February that a letter was the most dangerous thing. He told you in the form of general principle. He was right in every possible specific as well. Wilde has written letters, extraordinary letters, letters of great beauty and passion and specificity, letters that are sitting now in the hands of lawyers who will read them aloud in court, March 1895. You learn about it from the newspaper. The case is being heard. Wilde's prosecution of Queensberry has collapsed. Queensberry has been acquitted. And now, and this is the part that turns the city cold, the Crown is arresting Wilde. He had time to leave. People told him to leave. He sat in a hotel and did not leave, and now the law is taking him. You read about it in the newspaper on the omnibus, the words on the page: arrested, charged, gross indecency, conspiracy, 2 years hard labour. The words have a quality you've never fully experienced before. They are abstract and concrete simultaneously. They describe what could happen to you, what could happen to William, to Morrison, to Alderton, to Pierce, to Crawford, to every person in that warm room on Thursday evenings. They describe the machinery that has been there always and that is now, with the efficiency and cruelty of machinery, engaged. You get off the omnibus 3 stops early and walk. You need the walking, the cold air, the streets. What you feel is complicated enough to take the walk to properly examine. Fear. Obviously fear. The specific fear of recognizing yourself in the description of a crime, but also something else, something harder to name, a grief almost. Not for Wilde specifically, though for him too. For the exposure of something that was kept hidden for a reason. For the cost of visibility. For the particular cruelty of using a man's love letters as weapons. Love letters. Wilde's letters to Lord Alfred Douglas are going to be read aloud in court. The most private thing a person can produce is going to be performed for a jury and reported in the newspapers and discussed over dinner in houses where people have never thought about what it costs to be what Wilde is. And you have written no letters. You have written nothing. You were told never put anything in writing, and you didn't and you won't. But Wilde wrote letters because Wilde believed, or needed to believe, that the world he lived in was real, that the world of art and beauty and aristocratic connection and fame, the world in which he moved so brilliantly, was solid ground. It was not solid ground. The ground was the law. The law is the ground, and the ground is hostile. The Thursday evening after the arrest, Alderton's flat. The room is quieter than usual. Everyone is there. Crawford, Pierce, Vane, Bellamy, Tom, and the usual ease is present but different, more careful, a quality of conversation that is existing under a weight it usually manages without. Alderton begins with Parter, the same essay they discussed when you arrived 7 months ago. After about 20 minutes, the pretense of the essay falls away quietly, without drama, and people begin to speak about what they're actually thinking about. He should have left, Pierce says. He says it without judgment, in the manner of a man stating a fact. He thought he would win, Crawford says. He might have won if the letters hadn't existed. A silence. The letters were beautiful, Bellamy says. His voice is very quiet. He has said very little over the months you have known him. This is the most personal thing you've heard him say. Yes, Alderton agrees. They were also catastrophic. Both things are true. You say, are we safe? The question hangs in the room. It is the question everyone is thinking. You have put it into the air, and it is better you think that it is in the air. Alderton takes a moment. The immediate risk to people in this room is low. We don't know Wilde. We have no documented connection to his circle. We have been careful. He looks around the room, careful as I know you all to be. But the general climate, William says. He has come tonight, which is unusual. He does not usually come to Alderton's evenings. His presence means something. The general climate will be worse before it is better, Alderton says. There will be prosecutions, there will be police activity, there will be newspaper coverage that makes the general public feel that there is something to root out. He pauses. There have been these moments before. They pass. The community adapts. The community always adapts. This is true. You know it is true from everything you've learned about how the community has worked over decades and centuries. It adapts. It moves the map when the map becomes unsafe. It changes the signals when the signals become known. It survives. But surviving and being unhurt are not the same thing. What Wilde did, Pierce says, and then stops. He's trying to find the right way to say something complex. What Wilde did, in a certain way, is what we all do, what we've always done. He found a way to be visible, to exist, and the visibility got him killed. He pauses, not dead, but... The visibility was also beautiful, Crawford says. Pierce nods. I know it was. I loved him for it. We all did. That's the... He doesn't finish. The silence holds everything in it. Tom, from the floor by the fire, says, It will change. Everyone looks at him. Tom does not often speak in these gatherings. He is young, 20 perhaps, and was mostly silent for the first months you knew him, listening from his position on the floor with the quality of someone learning. Not now, he says. Not soon, but it will change. It has to. Nobody argues with him, but nobody agrees in a way that suggests certainty. You all drink tea. Crawford reads a poem that has nothing to do with any of this and everything to do with all of it. Vane draws in his notebook. Bellamy looks at the fire. The city outside continues. London does not stop for anything. Not even for the catastrophic public destruction of one of its most brilliant inhabitants. You walk home late. The streets are April streets. The same cold and damp as always, but sharper tonight. Your breath visible in the air. The gas lamps. You think about the letters, Wilde's letters, the fact that they existed and the cost of their existence. And you think about what it means that they were beautiful, that a man loved someone so much and with such intensity that he wrote letters of extraordinary beauty to them, and that those letters became weapons. That the most private human thing, the desire to communicate your feelings to someone else, to record them, to make them real in language, is the most dangerous thing you can do. And you think about the world in which that could not be true, the world Tom was talking about, the future in which the letters would simply be letters, in which the record of your life would not have to be carried only in your memory, in the perfect transience of unwritten things. That world is far away. You're 22, and it is 1895, and the law is not going to change in your lifetime. This is simply true. The law will not change. The community will adapt as it has always adapted. The map will redraw itself. The signals will shift. The Polari will absorb new words, shed old ones, evolve in its particular undercover way. The system will survive. It has survived worse, but Oscar Wilde will stand trial. He will be convicted. He will go to Reading jail. And the world will read his letters in the newspaper over their breakfast and feel whatever it is they feel. And the city will continue its commerce. You reach Clerkenwell, the familiar streets, the bootmakers, the smell of leather through the door. You go upstairs. Mrs. Partridge has left the kitchen dark. Mr. Everton is asleep, the slow, unconcerned breathing through the wall. The world sleeping. The world that does not know the things you know, or does not have to know them. You sit by the window of your room without lighting the candle. Outside, the street lamp, the amber pool of it, the fog beginning to build at the corner. The second heartbeat. It is still there. It will always be there. That is simply what it is. The particular rhythm of existing inside a world that has decided to be hostile to what you are. The permanent quality of carrying something that the world around you considers criminal and that you consider, as fully and clearly as you have ever considered anything, simply yourself. But it is not as loud as it was. 14 months ago in this room, the heartbeat was the whole room. The ceiling crack and the second heartbeat and the managed surface and nothing else. Now there is more. The map, the language, the rooms full of men who put the face down, the dinner in Marylebone, the bar in Soho, William, and the careful, gradual thing that is real and is building and will continue to build at the right pace. Alderton's flat on Thursday evenings, the warm amber light, the tea, the conversation about beauty. There is Pater's idea that you've been thinking about for 7 months, burning with a hard, gem-like flame, the quality of attention, the fullness of being present in your own experience, not managing the experience, living it. You have been living it, more and more, for months. Oscar Wilde will go to prison. The law will do what the law does. The city will read the newspapers and feel righteous or thrilled or frightened depending on what they are. And underneath all of that, invisible to most eyes, the community will do what it always does. It will adapt. It will move. It will redraw the map. It will change some signals and keep others. It will find new rooms, new back bars, new park sections, new Thursday evenings. It will continue to build the network of careful trust that is its only real infrastructure. It will continue to pass along the language, word by word, to the new arrivals who come with their second heartbeats and their managed faces and their 6 years of solitude. It will find them. It will always find them. That is what it does. You know this because you are now part of the chain. You are the link that Morrison was for you, waiting to be the link for someone else. The next James Whitmore from the next Manchester, sitting at the next desk, watching you move through the office with the particular quality of precision that only someone looking for it would recognise. You will see them, and you will see them seeing you. And eventually, in the correct amount of time, at the correct pace, you will say, there is a reading group, Thursday evenings, if you have an interest, and it will begin again. This is how it has always worked. This is how it will always work. The chain going back through the molly houses of the 1700s and the codes of 100 years before you, and further back than any record, to the first time two people in any city looked at each other with a certain quality of recognition, and understood, without words, that the world they carried was shared. The chain goes back that far, and it goes forward, though you cannot see how far forward, into a time when the map will look entirely different, when the signals will be different, when the whole architecture of the hidden world will have changed beyond recognition. But the principle will be the same: recognition, trust, the making visible of what has to be invisible, to the eyes that know how to see it. Some things don't change. The human need for this, for finding your kind, for putting the face down, for burning with the full quality of your actual flame, rather than the managed, dampened version of it. That doesn't change. The church bell somewhere. You have stopped counting the hours at night. It doesn't matter what hour it is. You know when you need to be at the office. You know where the chestnuts are sold. You know the map. You lie down. The straw mattress. The thin blanket pulled up. The ceiling crack. The ceiling crack. Still there. Still the same. The Y shape from corner to centre. The two smaller branches. But the room has more in it now. The room has become more room. Outside, the amber lamplight on the fog, the city continuing, always continuing. You're warm enough. You have enough. You have the map and the language and the rooms where you are known, and the chain that goes back to before any of this and forward into something you cannot see, but that Tom, young Tom from the floor by the fire, believes is coming. There are things ahead you cannot predict. There will be difficult years. There will be adaptations. There will be moments of the specific fear you carry, the fear made concrete rather than abstract, the fear that wakes you at 5 a.m. There will be the slow work of building the careful life, of constructing within the visible architecture of a respectful bachelor's existence the invisible architecture of who you actually are. But there is also this, the room in Clerkenwell that has become home, the ordinary life that contains within it the extraordinary map, the Polari growing in your internal voice, the green carnation that you have not yet worn but that you know now what it means, and that knowledge is its own kind of wearing. The air around you slows, the quality of the room shifts towards sleep. The particular darkness of a room where the candle is out and the lamplight from the street gives just enough. Tomorrow is a Wednesday. The document waiting on your desk is the tail end of a land purchase agreement. 47 pages, almost done. Tomorrow you'll finish it and start the next one, which Benson has told you is a shipping contract from Portsmouth. Longer, more technical. You will sit at your desk near the window. You will ink your pen, and at some point in the day, the new clerk from Kent, the boy from August who you have been watching with the careful eyes you have built, will say something, will look at something, will perform some small management of surface that gives you the information you are waiting for, and you will know what to do with it. Let the city continue. Let the lamplight do its small work. Let everything you have learned settle into you the way a good meal settles, the way all real knowledge settles, not with a flash, but with the slow weight of a thing becoming part of you. The second heartbeat, quieter now, not gone. It will not go, but quieter. Let it be quiet. Let the map be in pencil and in ink and still being drawn. Let the language grow in you, word by boner word. Let the Thursday evenings be what they are, and the bar in Soho and the park in Spring Light, and the dinner in Marylebone and William from Edinburgh with the careful, gradual thing. Let all of it be as real as it is, because it is real. The invisible things are real. The undocumented world is real. The chain that goes back to the first time two people recognized each other in any city and built a room that could not be found by the wrong eyes, That is as real as any building that was put up stone by stone in the light. More real, maybe, because it was built with more care. More care. You have learned that this year. The value of care. The way that necessity applied to attention produces something more deliberate and therefore more permanent than ease ever could. You have been careful. You have been slow. You have been patient. You have found the room. Let sleep come. Let the clock tick somewhere below. Let the city do what the city does. All 4 million of it. The night walkers and the tavern keepers and the gin shops and the watchmen calling the hours into the fog, and the men walking quickly with their heads down at 5 in the morning, and the rooms behind the rooms, and the parks within the parks, and the language beneath the language. All of it is London. All of it is real. And underneath all of it, breathing at the same quiet depth as the sleeping city, the thing that has been there always, the chain, the map, the people finding each other, still finding each other. You close your eyes. The last sound is the church bell somewhere across the rooftops. 1 strike, or 2. You're too far under to count. And then the long, soft dark. Good night.